Hey, my name is Chaden Patel, and I'm a research fellow. I focus a little bit more on the policy side. I'm from Sarasota, Florida, and I went to Williams College, graduated from there in 2018 with degrees in math and computer science. After that, I spent about 2 years working for a consulting firm called Parthenon, and now I'm a predoctoral fellow here.
Hey, my name is Rebecca Jackson. I went to Cornell University and studied policy analysis and management. Before coming to SEII, I worked in Washington, D.C. at a government contractor doing policy evaluation.
Hello, my name is Nicolas Jimenez. I'm a research fellow at SEII. I'm originally from Bogota, Colombia, and I went to college at Yale University where I double majored in ethics, politics, and economics and applied mathematics. And I started working at SEII right out of college.
Hi, my name is Julia Turner. I'm a second-year fellow at SEII. I went to Amherst College where I majored in economics and English, and I'm originally from Seattle, Washington.
The way I got into economics is quite random, I'd say. I think that's true for many people. When I was in college, I was exploring, different subjects, and I was really interested in modeling and mathematics. And most of my exposure to those ideas came from the hard sciences. So I was taking physics classes, and I took an economics class at the same time as my physics class on waves. And I remember being bored out of my mind about that class on waves because it was one equation that we solved over and over and over. And what we were learning in economics were these questions that were really important and exciting questions about why some countries have not developed and other countries have developed, and issues about why unemployment was so high in Europe and not so much in the United States. And I was contrasting my excitement about those topics with solving the wave equation with a different boundary condition. So after that class, and when I was a freshman, I got very excited and I started taking more and more economics.
I think there's a few reasons. The first is just the content of the research. I think it's really interesting. You're studying school quality, you're studying access to quality schools, you're studying policy impacts in K-12 education, and you're doing all this using quasi-experimental methods at the cutting edge of what I've ever seen, which is really exciting and challenging in a really nice way. The other thing is the cohort model. It's really nice to have a lot of other RAs who are going through a similar thing as you, and you can ask them questions and they can be your mentors and they can kind of help you out find your path in whatever grad school, whatever path you do afterwards, which is really nice.
I was particularly interested in the empirical work. I wanted to learn more about techniques in applied econometrics, and I knew that at SEII I could work closely with faculty who are experts in that field. I also really like SEI's collaborative research culture. Aside from working closely with faculty, research fellows often work together or with PhD students on our projects.
SEII in particular, I think one of the exciting things that we have going for us is we have a lot of engagement with our partners. So often, you work on a research paper, it takes a long time to finish, and you wonder if anyone's going to listen or pay attention. And so much of our work is aligned with things that our partners are interested in. And, if the paper doesn't get published, at least, someone who might have to make a decision has access to the information that we're producing. So that's, I think, something that really stands out about our group.
So being right in the MIT economics department and being able to go downstairs to a seminar or travel for a conference or sit in on classes was really important in giving me those data points that let me know, is this something that I want to pursue further?
And the last is that the track record of the previous research fellows is pretty awesome. They've gone to some really interesting grad programs. They've worked in public health departments. They've worked for some consulting firms. They've gone and taught and gotten grad programs in education. It's just all really exciting stuff. And it's really cool to know that that's somewhat within reach through this program and through this training.
I work on the higher ed side of things here at SEII. So I work on a project that is a large-scale randomized control trial out of Nebraska that studies the impact of financial aid on low-income college students. So right now we are in kind of phase one of the project where we're looking at their post-secondary outcomes, bachelor's degree completion, persistence, years of schooling, etc. And then we're about to start on phase two of the project that follows those same students through their labor market years. So we're going to look at labor market participation, employment, credit, student debt, whether they take out a mortgage, kind of looking at the long-term impact of financial aid on a person's life beyond just their student years.
During my time at SEII, I've mostly worked on projects at the intersection between market design and applied econometrics. These projects try to estimate the causal effects on students of attending schools with certain features. So for example, what's the effect of attending a highly ranked school on student test scores? To estimate these effects, we leverage features from large urban district school assignment mechanisms that induce random and quasi-random variation in school assignment.
I'm currently working on some policy simulations for a large urban school district in the US. And their big question is related to COVID-19. Because of COVID, they don't have the same admissions tests to get into public schools as they usually have in the past. Those tests got canceled in the spring. And so they're thinking about changing how they admit students to schools. And that has a lot of implications. And they want to model, well, what happens if we use this policy to admit students to schools versus this policy in terms of which students get better choices than they would otherwise, and which students get worse choices than they would otherwise. It's really cool because it feels actually impactful. They're going to make a change to this policy, and we've been giving them some data to back that up, which is exciting.
Right now, I'm working on a really exciting project analyzing the impact of automation on the labor force using historic census data from 1900 onward and trying to get a sense of what kind of new work has emerged and what kind of skills are going to be required in the future.
Research fellows work on a lot of different things here at SEII, so the typical day looks different for everybody. Fellows work on everything from writing and cleaning code, to running analyses, to editing statements of work with our partners. Fellows put together press releases and edit working papers. Most of the projects work pretty closely with data partners and funding partners, so a lot of the job is communicating with those folks. But fellows also work really closely with the PIs to run and present new analyses and push their projects forward in a lot of different ways. Every day really is different, and it's a very dynamic workplace.
A typical day for me involves a lot of coding. Since I work on long-standing projects, I manage their existing large code bases. I also write code that cleans, organizes, and then runs analysis on data. I run a lot of regressions. I do a lot of work with techniques involving instrumental variables and regression discontinuity designs. In my work, I've also replicated student match assignments for large urban districts in the US and created hypothetical match simulations of what would happen if we change certain parameters in their mechanisms. For all of this analysis, I then create graphs and tables that display the main results. And then for each project that I work on, I present the analysis at weekly meetings with Josh, Parag, and their co-authors.
One thing that I love about my job at SEII is that I get a lot of freedom and independence to work through issues and problem solve and project work, but I also get a lot of support from the professors and the other research fellows when I need it.
I think there's three main things I love about my job. The first is I think the problems and the analysis are just incredibly interesting and impactful in K-12 education, which I'm personally really interested in. The second thing is it's been really nice to have this cohort of research fellows that you can just get advice from, help debug things with, and just have along your path through your RA-ship. And the last thing is that I personally, in my role, have a lot of variety in the tasks that I actually do. So in any given day, I'm writing programs in Stata to do data analysis. I'm writing policy memos. I'm creating charts to visualize data. And I'm even building some software to help support a research project. And that's been really interesting and really nice in terms of just not doing any one thing all day.
I think in recent years, about half of the research fellows have gone on to some form of graduate school in economics. Working at SEII has made me more excited to continue a career in research, especially policy-relevant research, and I'm really looking forward to using the tools and the knowledge I've learned to apply in my future work.
And some of our research fellows go on to non-PhD tracks at all. We have plenty of people who have gone on to teaching programs or to consulting, and it's really nice to be in an environment where it feels like there's more than one track.
Well, first, definitely, we got to acknowledge that no matter what job you're doing, it's really tough to start a job during COVID. But I think at SEII, there's been a lot of tangible steps in the onboarding process and then just recurring from that on that have made the transition and the onboarding fairly smoothly, even though it's virtual. The first is when you first onboard, you do one-on-one virtual meetings with every RA at SEII. And that's really nice because you get to ask them all your dumb questions like how do I get on the server and all these basic things that you would normally just ask by turning to the person next to you, and now you just can't. So that's great. Then there's more recurring structural items. So there's these weekly lab meetings where everyone gets on a call, on a Zoom call, and they'll share kind of what they're working on and what some of their challenges have been and maybe some personal updates. So it's nice that you get to know people a little bit more, which is tough to do virtually. There's also these weekly RA lunches where all the RAs get on a Zoom call and have lunch together. And there's also some of the other MIT RAs that join, which is really nice. You also get to know the RAs in a more casual environment. There's also really helpful funding for just actual tech materials that can help you get your work at home set up. For example, a monitor is definitely on the docket to be able to be funded, which is really helpful, especially when you have like a Stato window up here and some instructions and you're paying someone and all this craziness is going on.
Right now in economics, as a discipline, what shifts are happening? There is I think lots of discussion about the economics profession and trying to make the profession more inclusive and more diverse and more welcoming. And, I think there's a lot of efforts to try to do that. So we kind of have this opportunity with the pandemic to reimagine a lot of what we do in terms of instruction and outreach and research.